Alright, LOTRO players, it's time to grab your cozy blankets because we got some tea to spill today. Most of you know me as the weird lady that's always telling you to play LOTRO. LOTRO's better than other MMOs, and just more or less, I'm always talking highly about LOTRO. But I want to be honest and candid with you all, and pretty much just comment on some things that I've been hearing from new players that I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm overall just critiquing and addressing the elephants in the room, and I just want to make it clear that LOTRO is still fantastic in my eyes. I love it. I just adore playing it. I mean, I've played it for like 17 years now, so I'm not going to stop, even though it has all of these issues. But I just want to make it clear to anybody who's looking at LOTRO, I don't want to give you like this cookie cutter thing where it's like this great MMO all the time. Like, things happen, but I mean, I want to just give you a realistic expectation going into the game. And if you appreciate my honesty, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel so much, and I greatly appreciate it. Before I even go on to explain any flaws within LOTRO, I just want to really give like a huge shout out to Standing Stone Games, the game studio who is currently running and working on LOTRO. I think that when it comes to any game, it doesn't even have to be an MMO. You have to have a development team that is constantly trying to improve their game, and at least in some sort of communication with their player base and just making updates. And I think Standing Stone Games, even as a smaller game studio as they claim, I think that overall they just have a really great atmosphere and rhythm going. I mean, LOTRO has several updates every year. They're always fixing any troubleshooting issues that come up. They're always updating like cosmetics and things that people look forward to every festival. So even if we are going to just critique some things about the game, I just want to give a huge shout out to SSG, because I think that that's probably why I've stuck with LOTRO so long, because other games that I've ever played, I never cared for the development team. They always just never followed through on promises and just overall would just run games down. And really, a development team or any sort of game studio can make or break a game, no matter how good the game itself is or even how bad it could be. But now for the tea. The number one thing I always hear about why people leave LOTRO is because of lag. Now, I hear this mostly from long-time players, more so than newer players, but lag is definitely something that is undeniable in LOTRO. It can't go unnoticed. Now, I think the thing with lag in LOTRO is that it does really affect gameplay, and it really affects the immersion factor, which is something that LOTRO really has going for it, in my opinion. I love being in Middle-earth. I love being surrounded by like all of the Shire vibes. You know, the hobbits are always so happy. I love going to the Elvish ruins in Ered Luin and checking that stuff out, always being in the woodsy environment, even in like Northern Mirkwood, for example. It's just a great game when it comes to immersion, and just overall that immersion can just instantly break as soon as you hit lag, as soon as you start losing connection almost with the server in some regards, and you're just stuck in place, or maybe you're in the middle of a battle and now you're literally just standing there waiting to hit your next skills, and you're hitting them and they're timing out, and now you've messed up your whole rhythm, and now mobs are still like attacking you and everything's trying to process, and then sometimes you even die from lag because it takes that long. Sometimes you can't even walk indoors. It happens, and unfortunately, it happens quite often in LOTRO in comparison to other MMOs. Now, I won't lie that most of the reason why this is just because there is only one central location for servers, which is in Boston, Massachusetts, as of right now. So I know that that is part of the issue, especially if you're like overseas or somewhere far away from Boston, you're going to have terrible ping. And not only that, even if you're close to the servers, you still have pretty bad lag, because I just don't think the servers are up to date. Now, I won't lie, I'm not a technical person whatsoever. I can literally give no ideas as to how all of that works or even any improvement there. But I just want to address that that is something that you will fall into when you get into the game. You will notice it immediately. It happens no matter what level you are, no matter what server you're on. But you could subside it a little bit by choosing a server that is less populated, which is why I play on servers like Crick Hollow. And if you need some recommendations on some servers, I do have a video that you can check out. But overall, I just want to say that that is primarily the reason why there is issues with the servers. It's just based on the server location only being in Boston. There was talk from a LOTRO development live stream a couple of months ago now that they did say that they possibly could have a new server location in Amsterdam, but I have not heard anything about it since, and I don't think it's been mentioned. It's a huge possibility that they could have a new server location. I mean, at least they're making progress to it, but I don't know when that could be, and I don't even think they know when that could be. So we're probably gonna have to be dealing with lag. Now, the next thing that I hear constantly from people, mostly from people who don't even want to try the game, they won't give it a shot because the graphics aren't updated, which totally fair. Okay, I get it. I think that, yeah, the game is 17 years old. They have done some minor updates to like character models. They've added more customizations. They've just rendered things a little bit better. But overall, yeah, there's no huge graphics rework. There was one kind of in the works, but it doesn't sound like it went through. And who knows if they're gonna try to pitch it again, if we're gonna get anything in the future. It might just not be in the cards for LOTRO. I will mention as well that people have stated that they want like 4K resolution, and just overall they want a better, smooth, playable experience on a technical aspect that I'm just not familiar with myself. So I'm not going to comment too much on it. I just think that with LOTRO, that is something that they could potentially improve on. I just want to state in fact that, yeah, it is an outdated game graphically. I won't lie, I've seen some other MMOs that look way worse. One thing that's really impeccable about LOTRO is that the game environment, like I've mentioned, is just quite stunning. It's so immersive, even with the graphics being kind of lower quality, I'll even admit. I think something that people should take into account is just how you feel when you're in the game. I know I've mentioned a lot about immersion, and I'm someone who doesn't even understand all of the lore, so some people really look forward to that aspect of the game. But I'm someone who doesn't even understand that, and I love this game because it's also like a nostalgia feeling, and it brings me back to like when I watched the movies and how I felt and how I wanted to be a part of places like the Shire, and now I can actually go to the Shire in the game, which is just incredible. And I think that that's something that we should really give a lot of credit to, because yeah, who else can say they've done that? Now, I won't lie to you guys, I've heard a lot of comments about the UI needing to get updated, and yeah, you're right. I can't even defend that at all, because it just needs a better overlook, okay? Like, the scaling options for the UI is what really does it. Oof, boy. Another thing I hear from newer players mostly is that the game isn't too thorough when it comes down to how you should navigate and how to go about going through your main story quests. Now, this is something I've actually never really considered because I've played the game for so long, so I just kind of have my own flow and my own rhythm, and I just know where to go. But if you're new to the game, it is incredibly difficult to navigate because you don't really have any sort of like big arrow or like maps that show you exactly where you need to go to pick up your next quest to continue through your main storyline. It's pretty much just you trying to follow through the quest line and making sure you don't become like under-leveled enough that you can't pick up the next quest. And what I mean by that is the way that you can kind of navigate some of that is the main story quest line is like a flaming ring. It's like this fiery ring above NPCs, and like side quests you can differentiate because NPCs will just have like this yellow ring above them, but the flaming ring is a main story quest ring. The problem is though, I think for most people, is that they get to a point where they then have to move on to a different area and they don't know what area to go to. And what happens is that if you become under-leveled enough or you're not progressing your character fast enough, you have to wait actually to pick up the next main story quests. I believe if you're like 5 levels under, you can't pick it up. So if you pretty much aren't a level that's accessible to pick up the quest, you don't even know who you need to pick it up from. So it's pretty discouraging, and I'm not gonna lie, the really only way that you can really navigate this is by using additional resources outside of the game. Now, I'm not gonna lie, that is a lot of work. That's way too much to be dealing with, especially when you're new and you're already overwhelmed. Why should you even have to consult additional resources? I hear you on that. Now, one thing I think that could be improved upon is maybe just adding something simple, is just changing the entire color of who gets your main story quest. Like, I don't know, make the ring like freaking bright green or something, like to indicate it's a main story quest. I just think a fiery ring, you don't really notice it. And honestly, I didn't even notice it for years until someone told me like a year ago. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, but I've played this game for how long? And I just now noticed that. So it just goes to show maybe there just needs to be like some sort of color coordination that's clearer. I mean, like obviously when you pick up a quest, then you get like this blue ring and then it has like a little thing through it. So like, you know, that's a little helpful to determine who your NPC was that you picked up a quest from. But I mean, in terms of like main story, I don't think it's that clear. And I think that there needs to be better processes put in place when it comes to at least making sure, indicating where people need to go next for their main story. Especially for LOTRO, the thing that LOTRO has going for it, but also doesn't, is because the game and the map and the world is so freaking ginormous, which is amazing because that means you have so much content to explore and you have so much game time to get through. But it's also bad because in the starter zones, now it's all kind of convoluted and it's all over the place and there's not like this clear straight line or straight path that you just keep walking and then you'll end up in the right zone. Now this kind of goes to outside of like the game and some critiques I have from like within the gameplay and even just technical. This goes more in terms of the system of how they're going about marketing the game. I think that's something LOTRO really has going for it in comparison to other games is the monetization of LOTRO. You can basically play entirely for free. I've done it for years. And even so, I think that they're super generous with earning in-game currency to potentially buy expansions and quest packs that you will need to eventually get in order to max out your character and complete your story. But I think that LOTRO does kind of fail in the marketing aspects in some ways. LOTRO has probably done the best job I have ever seen with any gaming company just by getting their game out from word of mouth. I feel like the only way I've known about LOTRO was people telling me, people who I knew who got into the game, they really liked it, they talked about it, it got me in, and just overall, me even making these videos, it's gotten people in because it's word of mouth, and you're not really, I guess, like looking for it. Sometimes, a lot of times, people are just stumbling upon it, and they find it, and then they hear about it, and then they're like, okay. But I haven't really heard many people say like, oh yeah, I saw like this game trailer for LOTRO and I thought, man, I have to check it out. I know that LOTRO runs some potential ads once in a while on like Facebook, but like even that, they don't do that much. Like there's not much marketing for the game. And I'm not gonna lie, this is not the time to market right now for them because I think we gotta get through the lag issue first before we can get more players in, because if we add too many players in at this point, we might break the game. I think that if SSG could potentially spend some of like their revenue going into potentially like marketing structures or ads or stuff like that, I think that that would help increase the game population. And that is something that people tend to, you know, feel LOTRO lacks in. They don't feel like they can really find people in the game. I mean, the world is massive and that's a lot of it. But at the same time, it's really hard to find people to fellowship with, and it's really hard to find people to do instances with directly within the game systems. A lot of people find it through going on Twitch streams, going on Discords, and that sort of thing. So I think just overall, that's something that LOTRO could definitely improve upon in the future, but not right now. And lastly, this isn't really a critique for LOTRO or just SSG, it's more of just a thing that you have to consider when you get into LOTRO. The main question I always get lately is that Amazon has announced that they're possibly going to do a Lord of the Rings MMO, and people are like, what does that mean for LOTRO? I have no idea. I don't even know if LOTRO knows what that means for them. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think LOTRO is going to go away at all because of a new Lord of the Rings MMO. In fact, I think that this would actually help them with getting more people into the game. But it also goes back to that marketing thing. If people don't know LOTRO exists, how are they going to get more people in? Hopefully, in a way, Amazon announcing this will then make people be like, oh my gosh, that reminds me, let me go check out some other Lord of the Rings games. And then they'll stumble upon LOTRO. So it's good for SSG. But it's something that you also have to consider even as a potential returning player or even as a new player, that there is going to be, I guess, this newer game coming out. And a lot of people are probably going to be questioning if LOTRO will be at risk at all. And that's something I can't answer, but I would say personally, this game has survived for literally 17 years. I don't think LOTRO is going anywhere. But if that's something that's potentially stopping you from playing LOTRO, or you see as like a negative against LOTRO, because maybe you're thinking that Amazon's MMO is just going to have like the best graphics and therefore why even waste your time on LOTRO? Well, I think that something that we'll just have to wait and see is how the story and all of that's created. And also, who knows if and when this MMO will even come out. We might be sitting here waiting like 10 years for this thing, okay? Either way, I just want to address that as like a potential thing that you might think as like a bad mark against LOTRO, but I actually think it might help them a little bit more in the long run. So overall, those are just some things that you have to consider when you play LOTRO. And yeah, there are things that LOTRO is going through that do need to be improved. But like I stated in the very beginning, SSG does a great job at least being in tune and in touch with their player base. So I definitely would say that just in that terms, I think that LOTRO is in great hands. I think LOTRO is a great game. But yeah, there are things that might be a little hindrance, we'll say. So let me know if you have any questions or comments that you want to add down below. And in the meantime, if you are interested in playing LOTRO, I do have a starter guide that I recommend you check out after this video. And of course, you better stay weird, you weird weirdos. And don't forget your cozy blanket next video.